What's going on? This is Theo Gremminger from Player Profiler, and we're talking about defensive streamers. We dropped a video last week, and I dropped an article on playerprofiler.com, and I got to say, not to flex it out for everybody, but we absolutely smoked it in terms of defensive streamers. Now, if you have set it and forget it defenses, if you drafted defenses like San Francisco, if you drafted defenses like Dallas, drafted defenses like Baltimore, most weeks this video means absolutely nothing to you. But for the rest of you out there, streaming defenses takes a little extra time. You're going to have to plan a week ahead sometimes. You're going to have to use fab on them. You're going to have to get on the waiver wire for your defenses, but it can provide an edge for you every single week if you do it right. And we're going to provide you defenses that are available in 40% of Yahoo leagues or more. We're going to go all the way down to ones that are very low rostered. And just to give a little receipts out there, you know, we're going to have accountability for the teams that we recommended. Last week, we talked about 7 defenses, and we talked about 1 defense to stash. So I gave you 8 defenses last week. All of them were available in at least 40% of Yahoo leagues, and most of them were available in like a ton of Yahoo leagues. Like there was several defenses I gave you last week, and check the video out where the defenses were available in like 75% of Yahoo leagues. So I like to use this threshold when I'm doing my waiver wire video, and I host waiver wire this year. I'm giving you players that are, you know, a lot less available. When it comes to defenses, though, people roster one defense almost always. Now, occasionally, especially if you're in a deeper format, like a 20-man league, then rostering a second defense, if they have an insane matchup 1 week ahead, is an interesting way to play the game and can provide you an edge. And I'm going to give you 2 defenses that you can stash heading into week 3 at the end of this video. So stay tuned. But just a little bit of accountability of what we did last week. Last week, I gave you the Chicago Bears defense as a must-add. They finished as the number 1 defense on the week. Just brush a little dirt off my shoulders with that one. I gave you the Cincinnati Bengals defense, and this one didn't destroy you, but it didn't help you at all. New England actually controlled that game, ran the ball very well. Cincinnati finished 17th on the week, so that's an L. Seattle defense, though, I gave you, and they finished 8th overall among all defenses, had 2 sacks, 2 picks, and got the win at home against Denver. The New Orleans Saints defense, that was a layup one against the Panthers. Didn't take a big brain to figure that one out, but I gave it to you anyway. They finished 4th overall in defensive scoring. I gave you the Minnesota Vikings on the road against New York. 2nd overall. Minnesota went absolutely nuts this past week against the New York Giants. The Giants are an absolute train wreck. And then I gave you also the Giants on the flip side in that game. Giants finished 15th overall. And Atlanta, I gave you against Pittsburgh. Atlanta finished 19th overall. Now, Atlanta did better in leagues where you get bonus points for opponent scoring. So you need to adjust this for your own scoring in your leagues. But again, doing this process, we out of 7 recommendations, we found the number 1 defense, the number 4 defense, the number 2 defense, and the number 8 defense, just streaming defenses. So we're finding an edge. We're helping you win right here at Player Profiler every single week with these videos. And then my one defense that you could stash with an eye on this week was the LA Chargers. Now, last week, LA was not rostered in like any leagues. And if you were able to stash them, some of you just used them. They ended up looking very strong against the Raiders. Now they're rostered in like 70% of leagues because you have this insane matchup against the Carolina Panthers this week. So we like the LA Chargers defense. And again, they finished 5th overall. So out of 8 teams, we gave you number 1, number 2, number 4, number 5, and number 8 defenses. And no team finished lower than 19th. So I didn't give you some team that just like fell completely off the face of the earth. So last week was a huge win. We're going to look to do it again this week. And let's start out with the Houston Texans. Want to make a note on them. I don't know if I can officially count them because they're technically rostered in 61% of Yahoo leagues. So we'll give them like a little asterisk on this one. But they're available in about 40% of leagues. So I wanted to reference them. Chicago will be missing Rome Odunze this week. Chicago struggled at times last week. Caleb Williams, a very poor outing in week one, a concerning outing in week one. Now, maybe the Tennessee defense is better than people are giving them credit, but Chicago certainly looked like a confused team out there. A lot of targets for Keenan Allen. He'll see a lot of them especially with Rome Odunze out. But Chicago is sort of a mess, and Houston is a buzzsaw. This defense has a ton of talent on it. They have an offense that's going to put pressure on Chicago to have to keep up. So this is a game where the Houston Texans defense, if they're available in your league, and a lot of you are like, not in my league, bro, but they are available in about 40% of Yahoo leagues. Take a look for that Houston Texans defense. They're highly recommended this week. Another defense this week, we're going to stay with the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle is still available in 62% of Yahoo leagues. So they've gone up from last week. Last week they were available like everywhere, but they're had a strong performance against Denver. And then this week they get a really cushy matchup against the New England Patriots. Now, the game is in New England, so we'll have to go from west to east, which can always be a problem. But I think this Seattle defense is going to be fine. New England is going to try to run a conservative game plan. They're going to try to use Ramondre Stevenson. They are going to not really put a whole lot of opportunities out there for the opposing defense to turn them over. So bear in mind, Seattle might be a slight floor play, but I think with their ability to rush the passer and their overall strength, I think they're still going to finish as a top 10 defense this week. And with top 5 potential, if everything goes their way and their offense is able to put pressure on New England and get the game flow in their direction. The Ryan Grubb offense, not that we're talking offenses here, but the Ryan Grubb offense, I think there's more left in the tank. And I think we'll see them be a little bit looser, especially where they have to go for it on the road. Just my take. I think Ryan Grubb's offense is going to look better in week 2. Another defense we have to mention, still available in 45% of leagues. Even if you don't want to use them this week, even if Houston scares you a ton, this Chicago defense is awesome. Awesome for fantasy. And we saw them kind of single-handedly impose their will on Tennessee last week, get that win despite the offense struggle. And that's the kind of thing that can get defenses getting a little bit momentum. Last week, Chicago had 2 interceptions. They had 3 sacks. They scored 2 touchdowns. They had a fumble recovery. Now, this is a different animal in Houston. You're talking about Houston has dudes. Joe Mixon's running especially well. CJ Stroud playing at a high level. All 3 wide receivers playing at a very, very high level. This is going to be a difficult road environment for Chicago, but just making a note, the Chicago defense should be rostered. If you want to stream somebody else this week and hold Chicago, there are brighter days ahead for the Chicago defense, because if you go back to the end of last season and then you add week 1, this Chicago defense, when they play average to bad offenses, they feast. And you're going to start seeing them affect good offenses as well. Just sort of the nature of the NFL. When these defenses are playing at an extremely high level, it can happen against good teams. Wouldn't necessarily bet on it this week, but Chicago should be rostered. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Indianapolis Colts, we like to fade bad quarterbacks. Last week, we talked about this with Daniel Jones, and this week, we're going to talk about this with Malik Willis. Green Bay has to switch to their backup. There's been a lot of talk that they're going to sign a Ryan Tannehill, but didn't happen. Malik Willis is behind center this week. Very limited player, a player that hasn't had any success in the NFL. You also have to add in the fact that despite it being a long week, Green Bay had to travel from Brazil to Green Bay. Now, according to my calculations, that's like 5,600-mile travel. And anybody who's traveled that far, I mean, that can take a little bit of toll out of you. For me, this is a danger spot for Green Bay. Anthony Richardson and the Colts played an extremely competitive game against Houston last week. Richardson, downfield passing ability, low volume pass attack, but Richardson's running ability. There's tons of athleticism at the wide receiver spot in Indianapolis. They're going to put pressure on Malik Willis to have to actually play. The conservative game plan will be there with Josh Jacobs, but I don't think it matters. I think that this is a streaming defense. And again, Indianapolis is available in 72% of Yahoo leagues. Going further down the list, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cleveland is a train wreck. Cleveland is now a team that we want to target defenses against. Deshaun Watson is playing very poorly. Last week's scoreline was even worse than it looked. Cleveland really pushed it in garbage time, left their starters on the field in garbage time to try to make the game look closer than it was. Dallas completely manhandled them. Now, Jacksonville, on the other hand, is available in 86% of Yahoo leagues, and there's some talent on that defense. Jacksonville affected Miami, an offense that usually imposes their will on people, and Miami needed to win in the very end of the game. So Jacksonville was able to hold Miami to 20 points, and Jacksonville had their moments where they really controlled things a lot in the first half. There was a big play from Tyreek Hill, big play from Jalen Waddle. Devon Achane broke loose on a incredible screen pass. So there was big plays they gave up. But when we look at this Cleveland team, they don't have the horses that Miami does, not even at all. They're going to lean on Jerome Ford a ton. They still have a few receivers out there, but losing David Njoku is a massive loss for them. They're going to switch to Jordan Akins. That's a downgrade at the tight end position. We also have both offensive tackles in Cleveland are banged up. This is a bad team right now on offense in the Cleveland Browns, and Jacksonville is going to look to get their first win of the season. This is a defense available to you pretty much everywhere. Go and grab yourself some Jacksonville Jaguars if you're in a deep competitive league. Now let's talk about defenses to stash. And this has been sort of a cheat code. And do I prefer, if you're in a shallow format, for you to roster like a handcuff running back or a flex that could pop? Absolutely. But if you're in a deeper league or a extremely competitive league where there's nothing on the waiver wire, then I love stashing a defense 1 week ahead when there is a smash spot. So this is not a fish move. This is not a square move. A lot of you out there saying, yo, Theo, I don't roster two defenses. This is a roster specific, league specific, and context specific move. But we are going to recommend two defenses you can stash every single week. And we might be giving you a defense that scores like 15 points because we're only recommending smash picks as stashes. And the first one, actually both of them this week, are so easy to get. If you have secondary waivers, this can be a dollar bid. If you have leagues that are allowed to have $0 bids, use a $0 bid because both of these teams have difficult matchups this week. We're talking about the number one stash is the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas Raiders last week had a competitive game against LA. This week they have a buzzsaw against Baltimore. No one wants to roster them this week. Baltimore should smack them. But the following week, Las Vegas has the Carolina Panthers coming into Las Vegas. This is a smash spot. We've seen what Antonio Pierce teams do when they have an advantage. Anybody remember last year when we were recommending this defense against that same LA Chargers team in the Brandon Stanley like final game where Antonio Pierce and them scored like 60 points and the defense went absolutely bananas? That's what we're looking at next week. Carolina going into Vegas. Vegas might be 0-2, and they are going to absolutely destroy this Carolina Panthers team. And the defense is one we're going to absolutely want to stream. So stash Las Vegas for week 3. Then the final defense to recommend, I think this Tennessee defense is actually pretty good. This team is one that we saw really affect the Chicago Bears. I think they have some talent on this defense. This week is an interesting one. They are going to hang around with the Jets this week, and I think Tennessee is actually going to give the Jets some problems. But much like Las Vegas, you're talking about a defense that's going to be available to you in like 99% of Yahoo leagues. Tennessee is one that no one wants any part of. This week they play the Jets in Tennessee. This could be like a sneaky defense for this week. Jets are on a short week heading into Tennessee. Now, I expect the Jets to win that game. But the following week, Tennessee gets Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers. That's a game where I think Tennessee's really going to get to Willis. This is a defense that we can stash. So my number one stash recommendation, the Raiders. Number 2 stash recommendation is the Tennessee Titans. And our defensive streamers for this week, Houston Texans, Chicago Bears, Seattle Seahawks, Jacksonville Jaguars, Indianapolis Colts. All 5 defenses are available in at least 40% of Yahoo leagues. Jacksonville and Indianapolis and Seattle are available in a ton of leagues right now. Go check them. I'm Theo Gremminger. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Look for me on all my podcasts, Press Coverage, First Class Fantasy, Waiver Wire, Dynasty Life. I'm everywhere here at Player Profiler, and we're going to help you crush it this season.